myself, I'm a very pessimistic person. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take the down. So Brianna, what is our first up of the week?
Well, I just thought about something, so I'm going to go put an honorable mention in here.
Hmm.
Only because this only happened opening day and he's struggled since.
Okay.
Adley Rutschman.
Yeah.
The Orioles, who went 5 for 5 with 4 singles and a home run on opening day. I have him on my fantasy team. I was very happy, and all of my hitters have struggled since. And it's not pleasant. But yeah, so I figured that'd be a nice little honorable mention, just because he's done something on an opening day that nobody had been able to do since, like, at all, ever. So, and I just remembered it. So sorry to spring that on you.
No, it's good. I'm adding that up to the notes right now. So, I think the thing about Adley Rutschman is this is a kid. I would say he was on the Buster Posey level of hype coming up. And last year played very well, especially on the defensive side of things, which I think as a former catcher, you can kind of understand that, that's really difficult. Obviously, hitting is very difficult as well, but being a catcher, fielding all the different moving pieces that you have to deal with, I think he performed very well. And for the Orioles, I think that's the first thing they wanted to see. Now, 5 for 5 on opening day, that's fantastic, but you're going to have some other days that I think he's feeling now. I think he'll be just fine. He's going to probably hit around 260 to 280, maybe pop 20 home runs. I think he's just fine. But yeah, I think 5 for 5 on opening day may have set the bar a little too high. There was going to be some regression going forward, no doubt.
Maybe, but I figure since nobody's done that before, I'm just like,
Definitely.
why not put him in there?
Definitely.
As an honorable mention, because I obviously haven't seen that on an opening day before, and he deserved it. And then he went over 5 2 days later.
Yeah, well, that's baseball, though, right? Like,
I know it is.
You can have that happens to everyone. That's why we love it.
So the first actual up, now that we're gonna go back to this, is the Milwaukee Brewers, who lost on opening day against the Cubs and are 6-0 since, and they swept the Mets, which obviously is hard to do. And they beat St. Louis yesterday. Granted, we will get to St. Louis in a minute, so I'm not going to say too much on it, although it's certainly fun. Although with Garrett Mitchell, when he hit the walk-off against the Mets like a couple days ago, obviously he got dunked with the Gatorade. I wish that he had that cheese hat on when they did it. I would have loved to have seen photos of that, but missed opportunity, guys.
Well, it's early though. I think they're worried about the longevity of the cheese head. I would say that.
He had it on, and like before that, like there's obviously pictures of him that had it on it. And then I think it was while he was doing the interview, he should have had the cheese hat on. But then they just dumped him in Gatorade, and it was a missed opportunity with the hat.
Yeah, they'll be better, hopefully.
They could buy more. It's Wisconsin. Like, they can find cheese hats anywhere. Have you met Packers fans? But it's that
magic cheese hat, though. It could be a magic.
Have you met Packers fans, though? They all have.
Unfortunately,
you can find them.
Yeah, cheese for brains.
It's very easy to find. They're fine.
It definitely an opportunity that would have been nice to see, but yeah, it's thinking ahead next time. Hopefully they'll make adjustments. But that's probably the only real negative you can say on the Brewers right now is the cheese head needed to stay on during the celebration. But my first down of the day is going to be, of course, as Brianna kind of alluded to, the St. Louis Cardinals. Obviously, it's still very early, no time to panic. But look, this is a team that's very good usually at home. Well, they got swept by a very good Braves team in St. Louis. You don't see that too often. And that's not something that the Cardinals have to deal with, especially their fans. And then the last 4 games, they've only scored 7 runs. And it's interesting because this is a team that still does have a team on base percentage over 350. So they're getting on base. They're just not getting them in. That's very difficult and very frustrating if you are a Cardinal fan at the moment. But once again, it is still very early. I don't think we're going to see the Cardinals in 4th place when it's all said and done, but definitely need to kind of get the ship righted sooner rather than later. But any thoughts on the Cardinals?
I had expected them to do better at the start. But then again, the Central is just the Central. So,
yeah.
The Central can go any which way. Obviously, I wasn't expecting St. Louis to be last, but I mean, it is what it is. They obviously have a lot of time to come back, though.
Oh yeah,
Just like the next down does.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more disappointed in the next down than I am in the Cardinals. So for the second up, it's the only undefeated team that we've got so far in Tampa. Look, yes, there are teams that have at least one loss, but nobody else has not lost a game yet this season. Obviously, that could change. I forgot to check who Tampa's got. Oh, they've got the A's. They're gonna win this series. So they're still going to be undefeated for some time unless the A's can figure out what the hell they're going to do, because the A's just are the A's and they are in the bottom of the food barrel in the American League at the moment. And then the Rays have the White Sox, or not the White Sox, the Red Sox.
Oh,
and then the Blue Jays.
Wow.
So it might take some time.
Yeah, because I believe the Red Sox have already been swept by the Pirates, and that should immediately eliminate you if you get swept by the Pirates.
Yeah. So it's probably going to be about a week before we possibly see a Tampa Bay loss.
Yeah, this is obviously a very good team off to a very hot start. It's, Kevin Cash knows how to manage this team. He knows how to put the pieces in the right order for them to be successful. Very good start for the Rays. And I think they are kind of looking around at that East, at least with the Yankees and Blue Jays. They know that they're going to have to put some wins on the board overall over the whole season. And however they got to do it, even if it's, going 10, 11 and 0 early on, they're going to need to get that done to win the East.
And their schedule up to this point was Detroit and Washington.
Yeah.
Before this series against the A's started. So they got off real easy.
Yeah, but at the same time, we see it all the time. Like I said, I don't believe the Pirates are better than the Red Sox. But,
I don't either.
It's sometimes it's you beat the teams you're supposed to, and that's what the Rays are doing.
But at the same time, we all know that the Red Sox did absolutely nothing. Really, well, yeah.
But my point being that a lot of times in baseball, the best team talent wise doesn't always win. And we're seeing that with Tampa, that, because look, I would not have been surprised if the A's stole one or if Washington stole a game. In that situation, I don't think you ever can expect a Major League Baseball team to sweep a 3-game series against whoever they're playing. It's just baseball is difficult to kind of find that winner here and there, but we've seen from Tampa a really, really solid start. Hopefully they keep this rolling, but yeah, the schedule definitely did them some favors, but they're going to have to play everyone eventually. That schedule is definitely going to start to stiffen up, and we'll see how they perform going forward. But moving on to the second down of the day, of course, it is the defending National League champions, the Philadelphia Phillies. They were, of course, the last team to win a game after starting 0-4. The ERA for the pitching staff, I believe, is north of 6. But I don't think there's really any time to panic. However, in that division, you really can't afford, or, at least when it comes to facing, the Braves and the Mets, the Nationals and Marlins, they're kind of already an afterthought. But for the Phillies, you can't fall too far behind the Mets and the Braves. So they're going to have to try to figure out a way to, have a good week, put something together to, at the very least, kind of catch their breath, especially in that sports town. I say it's no time to panic, but, Phillies fans panic after the first inning on opening day. So it's always going to be a very pressure-packed area going forward. But Brianna, do you have any thoughts on the Phillies?
I'm just overly disappointed in the Phillies. I thought they were going to do well to start the season, but that obviously didn't happen. And like you said, like the East is a really hard division, whether you're in American League or the National League. Obviously, the American League is a little bit harder, but you've still got really good teams in the East. And like you said before, everybody still has to play everybody else. So we'll see how that works. But the Phillies really they got swept by Texas. Come on.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get to Texas in a minute. But,
and that's a perfect segue into our third and final up. What you got for us, Brianna?
It is the Texas Rangers, who I am very shocked by at the moment. Like I said, they swept the Phillies. They went 1-2 versus the Orioles, lost to the Cubs last night. Obviously, they still have to finish their series against the Cubs. So I don't see them being in the tie for first with the Angels for much longer, especially since actually, never mind. After the Cubs, they've got the Royals before they then have the Astros in a fight for Texas. So we'll see what happens with the Rangers, but obviously they are a shock at the moment compared to the third down in that same division, who obviously neither of us saw being at the bottom. Granted, the A's are still below them.
Well, yeah, and also too, I will put a caveat out there for the Downs. Look, there were some usual suspects that could have been on the Downs, i.e. Royals.
It's too early to retire.
Exactly. I don't. Let's let
too early.
Yeah, I want to save the bullets for them, or else they'd be on this list every week. So yeah, you had to kind of spread it out.
But we know how we feel about the A's.
Yeah, they'll make their appearance, but at this point they don't really matter. It's kind of like we're ignoring them, which is even worse than acknowledging them. But anyways, in terms of Texas, we'll see if this kind of sticks. I think they have pieces there. Obviously, DeGrom staying healthy is key, even though he's had some, kind of shaky starts or some starts that we're not used to seeing out of a Jacob DeGrom. But it's going to be interesting to see if Texas can kind of keep their head above water. There's definitely some talent there, but they're going to need some pieces to other pieces, I should say, to step up besides the Corey Seagers and the Simeons and the Jacob DeGroms. But Texas, interesting to see if we'll see them on this list in the near future, at least on the upside of this list in the near future, or if they just kind of start to fade into the darkness that we're so used to them fading into. But as we kind of said, the final down of the day, it is unfortunately everyone's, kind of under or dark horse to win the American League. It is the Seattle Mariners. Not a great start for Seattle. They've lost they've lost their first two series of the season to both the Angels and the Blue Jays. And overall, this is just a team that I think maybe dealt with an entire offseason of expectations. There's a lot of talk about them possibly being good enough to challenge the Astros. I don't think they were at that level, but I think this was a playoff team. Maybe those expectations caught up to them early. We'll see how that goes. Once again, still very early, but Seattle not off to the greatest start. Brianna, what are your thoughts on the Mariners?
I'm just shocked they had pretty much like two straight series against the Guardians of all teams. Yeah. The Angels just smack dab in the middle. But look, they've got to finish this series with the Guardians. I don't see that going very well. Then they've got the Cubs, and then they've got Rockies at home, Brewers at home. So at least they're not in Colorado. That I'm gonna give them that. At least they're not in Colorado, because that would have been worse. But they don't have the easiest start to their season. They don't have the easiest schedule, especially since they've got Milwaukee this early. Yeah. So I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. And they're just gonna keep getting. They've got just national team after national team after this series with the Guardians, because after the Brewers, it's the Cardinals, then the Phillies, and then they finally get back to the American League.
Well, of course, this year is the first time we're seeing every team play every other team. So I do think even with the Padres playing the Braves this early, I mean, they're going to be finished with the Braves by the midpoint of April. And I just think there's a lot of, even with the Seattle-Cleveland matchup, you'll see them 6 times in your first 12 games, and then you won't see them the rest of the year. So a little interesting scheduling quirks that are being worked out there. But I do expect Seattle to, at the very least, kind of right the ship. I don't think they're going to be a team that wins the division unless Houston regresses heavily. But I think they could compete in a very good and maybe possibly very congested American League West. And no, Oakland, we are not talking about you in that congestion, unfortunately. No. But no, not even.
No,